The concert hall glittered under the golden lights, filled with laughter, chatter, and the sharp clinking of champagne glasses. It was one of those evenings that felt too grand to be real, an elite charity gala, hosted in one of New York's oldest and most revered music venues. Every seat was taken, every guest dressed in elegance. But behind the glamour, something far more profound was about to unfold. At the center of it all sat a world-famous pianist, the evening's star attraction. Confident, charismatic, and known for his showmanship as much as his skill, he had the crowd in the palm of his hand. As he finished a dramatic piece with an exaggerated flourish, he stood and spoke to the audience, eyes twinkling with mischief. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "to lighten the mood, I'd like to invite someone unexpected from the audience to join me. Anyone brave enough to play a few notes?" Laughter echoed across the grand chamber. People looked around, amused, some even nervous at the idea of being chosen. Then his eyes settled on her. A woman sitting quietly at the very back, alone, plainly dressed, hair pulled back in a loose, tired bun. Her seat looked like it had been given last minute, squeezed in by a charitable sponsor. She didn't fit in, and everyone noticed. "You," he said, pointing. "Yes, you in the back. Come try. Just for fun." The crowd laughed politely. Some smirked. A few whispered cruel things behind their crystal flutes. She stood slowly, hesitantly, and made her way toward the stage. Her shoes were worn. Her coat was threadbare. People assumed she'd wandered in by mistake or was perhaps part of the event staff. A few even muttered the word "homeless" under their breath. But she climbed the steps without saying a word and sat down at the piano bench. The pianist gave her a little smirk, as if to say, "Just hit a few keys, and let's keep moving." The orchestra behind him chuckled softly. And then, silence. She placed her hands on the keys. The first note fell like a whisper. Then another and another. Within seconds, it was clear. This wasn't someone randomly plucked from the audience. This was someone who knew. The hall, once filled with idle chatter and amused murmurs, fell still. Every eye turned toward her. Every breath held. Her fingers moved like they were dancing. No, like they were telling a story too painful for words. A haunting melody began to rise from the piano, something sorrowful yet strong. The room's temperature seemed to shift. Faces changed from smug amusement to open-mouthed awe. People began to remember what music could really feel like. And in the shadows, a man who had arrived late stood frozen. He knew that song. Not just the melody, but the way it was being played. The exact way. It had been written years ago by her. But no one had known. Not the world. Not the press. Not the man who claimed he'd composed it. The pianist stood frozen too. Because the piece was one he had once taken credit for, a forgotten composition sent anonymously to a conservatory he once attended. A piece that had launched his career. And now, the real composer was playing it right in front of him. Gasps started to ripple through the room. A famous music critic in the front row stood up, transfixed, hands shaking. Someone dropped a glass. The orchestra stared, not daring to interrupt. She played as if she was releasing years of buried truth. Every note revealed a secret. Every crescendo was a scream of betrayal and beauty intertwined. And when the final note fell, a delicate, barely there whisper, the silence that followed was thunderous. The pianist said nothing, could say nothing. And the crowd? They stood. Every single person. In stunned, reverent silence. A standing ovation not of excitement, but of deep, shaken respect.
She didn't bow.
She simply stood, turned and walked away, past the pianist, whose face was now pale, eyes empty. Past the glittering crowd, who now looked at her with something between reverence and guilt. But she didn't walk back to her seat. She walked out of the hall entirely. The next morning, headlines flooded the internet. Unknown woman stuns elite gala with lost masterpiece. Did this homeless musician compose the piece that made a star? Truth behind the piano, a stolen legacy returns. Footage went viral. Millions watched. Comments poured in. Asterisk, she played like she lived it. Asterisk, asterisk. You could feel her pain in every note. Asterisk, asterisk. I haven't cried like this since I lost my mom. Asterisk. Digging began. Old manuscript surfaced. Recordings. A trail of overlooked brilliance leading back to a woman who had once studied at the Royal Conservatory and then vanished. A woman who had once been promised a future by a mentor, then betrayed. A woman who had ended up on the streets after her life was stolen one opportunity at a time. And then a photo leaked, an old one, of the famous pianist and the same woman years ago, standing side by side, smiling. She had been more than just a joke. She had been the origin. In the days that followed, offers flooded in. Labels, interviews, invitations. But she disappeared again, just as quickly as she came. No one knew where she went. Only rumors. That she didn't want the fame, just the truth to come out. That her performance wasn't for applause, but for closure. And somewhere, in a quiet subway station, a musician plays to a trickle of passers-by. Fingers flying. Music soaring. A story in every note. Sometimes the greatest symphonies are played not in front of thousands, but for oneself, and those who truly listen. And just like that, the hall went silent.